She was one of the most famous models of the 90s. A global star, her face was known everywhere. Beautiful, intelligent, untamed. Today, almost no one remembers her. Tatjana Patitz. How can someone who defined an era fade from the memory of generations that followed? She was one of the great supermodels of her time. Millions saw her. But few truly knew the woman behind the image. Perhaps that was her secret. In California, between horses and rolling hills, she found peace, still beautiful, almost ethereal, yet far from the world that once celebrated her. Others turned themselves into brands, into myths. She chose invisibility, and in that choice, she became unmistakable. While her peers learned to extend their fame through reinvention, Tatjana's silence became her signature.
I don't think modeling is a fairy tale at all.
Before she stepped away, she had been part of a time when fashion began to mean more than clothing. The runways of the 90s were no longer quiet presentations. They were spectacles, stages where designers built entire worlds, and models became the symbols of a new age. A few years earlier, haute couture had been stiff, almost ceremonial. But by the mid-80s, everything changed. Fashion became louder, bolder, more excessive. And right in the middle stood Tatjana Patitz. It was the cultural turn of fashion, when designers like Gaultier and Mugler staged theater instead of tailoring, and the model became part of the story, not just the display. At Chanel, Versace, or Valentino, she was one of the faces that defined every season. Karl Lagerfeld made her part of his world. He staged Chanel like perfectly composed tableau, cool, strict, elegant. Tatjana fit that vision effortlessly. She was the calm between the lines, the silence within the noise. Then came Versace, loud, dazzling, unapologetic. Final moments when the supermodels walked arm in arm. Naomi, Cindy, Linda, Christy, and Tatjana. It wasn't fashion anymore, it was power. The moment when models became icons. For the first time, the audience didn't see clothes. They saw characters. The runway turned into a stage of identity. Tatjana moved through these worlds with composure. No showing off, no pose, only presence. Others sought the camera, the audience, the applause. She simply walked. And that was enough. She was one of the big 5'5" women who shaped an era, yet could not have been more different. Tatjana, the quiet one. The balance. Naomi Campbell, explosive and unpredictable. Linda Evangelista, the diva who once said she wouldn't get out of bed for less than $10,000. Cindy Crawford, the all-American girl. Clever, commercial everywhere. Christy Turlington, angelic, almost untouchable. 5 women, 5 extremes, and at the heart of them all, Tatjana, who never needed to perform. She was the quiet pulse of that circle. Together, they changed the idea of beauty forever. No longer nameless faces, but personalities, characters, brands. They redefined the hierarchy. Models were no longer muses of designers, but equal partners in shaping an aesthetic age. And in that moment came Tatjana's biggest stage, freedom. That was George Michael, the biggest pop star of his time, a man who wrote hits that filled stadiums. But when he planned his next music video, he made a radical decision. He wouldn't appear in it himself. Instead, he let the faces of the era speak, the icons everyone knew by their first name. Soft, cool light, a bluish-gray studio tone, smoke, minimalist rooms. No performance, no effects, just presence. Tatjana, calm, leaning back with that gaze that didn't ask, it declared. The video became a symbol of a new age.
His people talk to my people. Yeah, that's how it went back then. I didn't know what exactly they had planned. They sent us the song and said we would be lip syncing.
Models suddenly had the same power as musicians. They became brands, cultural icons without saying a word. Freedom made them immortal. It was a time before the internet. Television offered only glimpses, and those who wanted to experience fashion turned to magazines. Back then, a photograph was an event. The monthly magazine covers defined taste, dictated desire, and decided who was remembered. High-end photography was the ticket into that world, turning faces into legends long before social media existed. The photographers captured what the catwalks could not. Tatjana worked with the most renowned names, from Peter Lindbergh to Ellen von Unwerth. But two of them revealed her essence like no others. Helmut Newton saw in her a cool, distant elegance. He photographed her in black and white, strict, cinematic, without distraction. Tatjana embodied restraint without losing allure. Herb Ritz showed the opposite. He photographed her by the sea, in the wind, her hair wet, the light soft. His images were warm, intimate, marked by trust and closeness. And even there, she remained authentic, capable of being both unreachable and vulnerable at once. Between Newton's severity and Ritz's tenderness, something larger than fashion emerged. It was art, and Tatjana was the canvas. Their lenses defined the two sides of her myth, Newton's discipline, Ritz's humanity. Together, they captured the balance that made her timeless. Her images appeared on the covers of Vogue, Elle, and Harper's Bazaar. Not once, not twice, but over and over again. Anyone who opened a fashion magazine in the 80s or 90s knew her face. Pictures like these make a model timeless. They let her live on, long after the shows have ended. And yet, Tatjana became the forgotten one. In the next decade, fashion changed its rhythm. New faces appeared faster, and permanence became impossible. Perhaps her calm came from her roots. She was born in Hamburg, raised in Sweden, surrounded by nature, animals, and silence. No jet set, no big city. In 1983, she entered a modeling contest, not as the winner, but as the girl who came in third. Still, it was enough to take her to Paris, and that's where it all began.
Did anybody teach you any tips?
Not really. No, not really. You gotta kind of learn, flow with it.
It wasn't a loud beginning, no scandal, no flashbulbs, just a quiet arrival, as so often in her life. Her early months in Paris were difficult. Crowded flats, shared rooms, and constant travel between agencies. It taught her resilience long before fame brought comfort.
They're really difficult. Really, so much running around, staying in really small apartments with a lot of girls, and quickly getting used to the whole.
Not glamorous at all, that
Yeah,
is.
no money, you know, just really weird. It was hard. Of your personal life, it's really difficult to have a great, beautiful relationship when you're always on the road, always traveling, and you run into all sorts of conflicts, jealousies.
After her relationship with Seal, Tatjana met the man who gave her peace. They married in 2003. Their son Jonah was born a year later. With his birth, the myth faded. The person mattered more than the figure. She moved to California, away from cities, away from fashion. A house, horses, nature that became her world.
Nature feeds me. Nature is important to me, and it's really grounding for me, and it's necessary.
She often said that the silence of the countryside healed what the noise of fashion had taken. Tatjana remained connected to fashion. She still walked for Chanel and Gaultier, appeared in campaigns for Shiseido and Jill Sander, but never as an echo of her past. Instead, she gave her energy to something else. She became an advocate for wild horses in the U.S. and for the protection of elephants. Animals, nature, her son, that was what truly mattered. Her activism mirrored her essence, calm, consistent, and quietly effective. In January 2023, Tatjana Patitz died of breast cancer. She was only 56. The fashion world was shaken. Designers, photographers, and peers all called her one of the most beautiful of her generation. But for Tatjana, beauty was never the point. She defined herself not through glamour, but through grace.